This is the Antrim Coast Road, and it's a road that came very close to actually never being constructed at all, but when it was finished over 180 years ago, it completely transformed both the physical landscape of this part of Ireland and the lives of the thousands of people who lived along its length. It's often listed as one of the top coastal drives in the world, and today I'm going to tell you the story of its construction, including a connection to the ill-fated HMS Titanic. And what better way to do that as I ran the Antrim Coast Half Marathon, a race that takes in the first several miles of this incredible road. It would of course be just typical that the day we're running this incredible route, we're getting some typically nasty Northern Irish weather. Thankfully I've got some footage of it in better conditions to show you. I'm currently in Larne. It's a town about 20 miles north of Belfast, and it's a place that has its own rich history going right back to the Middle Stone Ages. Throughout the centuries, Larne has been raided by the Vikings. It's been ruled by the High Kings of Ireland. The Greeks referred to it in their writings, and the Romans once accidentally visited here. And today, it's a major port town, and it marks the start of the Antrim Coast Road. Have you seen the Coast Road before?
No.
Did you know that throughout the centuries, Larne has been raided by the Vikings?
Yay!
And the Romans once accidentally visited here. I'm going to do this the entire race. Here's someone who's travelled all the way from County Meath just to see the Antrim Coast Road.
Westmeath.
Westmeath. How are we feeling? Cold. You've got to look on the bright side though. You're not going to overheat, you're not going to dehydrate, that's right, and you're not going to need to have a shower afterwards. Away we go! Hey! 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 What's your top tips for running a half marathon? Don't stop. Don't stop. Okay. Right. Bye. So as a port town, Larne has historically always been really well connected to the rest of the country. But the same cannot be said for the land further north of here. The Antrim Hills and the Glens of Antrim, which are a mass of rolling green hills and glens that come crashing down into the sea. So 200 years ago, this spot right here at the foot of these cliffs would probably actually have been in the sea, at least at high tide. In the 1800s, the Glens of Antrim were described by surveyors as, like this, a barren waste, an asylum of miserable and lawless peasantry, which for some reason the tourist board doesn't really use anymore. All the towns and villages along this route were completely cut off. There was no access, there was no road here. The only access was by boat. They were almost frozen in time. That tunnel, this road 200 years ago didn't exist. It was easier to jump in a boat, sail the 13 to 20 miles over to Scotland to do business than it was to go the 20 miles inland to the nearest market towns. So for literally centuries, the connection with Scotland was much greater than the connection with the rest of Ireland. And in fact, around 500 AD, there was a kingdom set up because they called the Kingdom of Dalriada, and the whole Glens of Antrim area was part of a Scottish kingdom ruled by Scottish kings for 350 years. So then by the 1700s and the early 1800s, Ireland is under British control, okay, and the lives of the people who lived along the Glens were about to change forever, because there was a rebellion in 1798, which funnily enough was started by Irish Protestant Presbyterians teaming up with Irish Catholics to fight the British. So it does go to show that we can actually work together given the right motivation. Now obviously British weren't too happy about this, and they didn't like the fact that there was a pocket of people in the Glens of Antrim that they couldn't get access to. So the proposal was, we need to build a military road so that we can get up in there just in case these lads kick off again. And that was the original plan for the Coast Road. We're at Carnfunnock, and fun fact, the rock pools over there are where John Hughes and his siblings spent many Sunday afternoon hunting for sea creatures. So in order to get the road built, the Scottish Government sent over an engineer called William Bald. And I couldn't find any pictures of him, but here's what AI thought he might look like. So William does us a massive favour by making, like all engineers, he makes the project go massively over budget.
Oh, classic Scottish.
The original plan was the road was supposed to go inland to connect all the villages up. William Ball's plan was to blast the cliffs down into the sea, create a platform to build the road. He got told, couldn't happen, wasn't possible, but stubborn Scotsman that he was, and also maybe helped his boss was English, he grabs his explosives and starts blasting the cliffs. And these cliffs, which stood for...
See that cliff there?
Yeah, that cliff there. It's over here now. So these cliffs that stood and survived human empire after human empire came tumbling down into the sea. 300,000 cubic feet of rock fell down and formed the platform that the road was going to be built on. And 40 kilometres of road was built nearly around the headland into Ballygally, which is where we get to turn around. Get going, 2 hour group!
Woo!
Hey! Well, they're running too hard. Alright, that's us into Ballygally, and that is as far as we go in the coast roads. We're going to look back now and head back to Larne, but the coast road continues for another 20 miles up in through the Glens of Antrim before it connects back onto the Causeway coastal route that leads on up to the Giant's Causeway, and the landscape on up that way is absolutely incredible. So if you're ever here and you get a chance to get in the car and drive the rest of the coast road. The road was completed in 1842, and aside for some updates after a massive landslide in the 60s, it's been fairly unchanged since then. And as you'd expect, this road completely changed the lives of the people that lived in the area. It opened up routes between the villages that before were only possible by boat. It created new job opportunities, new transport opportunities, and life was never the same in the Glens area. And the trade back and forth to Scotland, well, that gradually faded over the years, and eventually now the only regular crossing is the Larne to Stranraer ferry. So we gained one of the most beautiful coast roads in the world, but it came at the cost of a way of life that would never return. What's really interesting is that this road was built at just the right time in history, because it would not be allowed to happen today. It just wouldn't happen. First of all, the cost today to build this road would be about 400 million. But the other factor is an environmental one, because when they blasted these cliffs, they destroyed the habitats of countless seabirds. And the birds have returned here, but nowhere near the numbers that would have been here originally. And if you go further north to the cliffs of the Causeway Coast, you'll see massive colonies of seabirds that once upon a time would have lived up in these cliffs. So probably for that reason alone, this road would never get constructed today. Right, and what about that tenuous connection to the Titanic? Well, in April 1912, the Titanic conducted sea trials just to make sure she was seaworthy, so they obviously worked well, out of Belfast. The Titanic sailed for about 2 hours in some direction along the coast. There's a little bit of debate in which direction she took, but if she headed north, there's every chance that if you were stood on this road back then, you would have spotted Titanic out there doing her sea trials. So local Irish people standing on a road commissioned by the British government and built by a Scotsman, watching Ireland's greatest engineering achievement head out to sea before it was sunk by an Englishman, if you can follow that. And I think at this point I should probably shut up and just try and finish this race. There we go, downhill onto the promenade, and then it's a nice flat 1 kilometre to the finish. Get the high five. Well, if the sun had went out, I might have dipped my legs in the sea, but that has got to be the worst weather this race has ever had. I've been running this for 7 or 8 years, and yeah, hasn't come close to being this bad. But yeah, that distant dream of William Bald of the amazing Coast Road is but a far distant memory in the past, nearly 200 years now. And I kind of wonder what that Scottish engineer would have thought of the fact that nearly 200 years later, you have 4,000 people from all over the world coming to run a really fast and flat race on that road that he built. And I suspect he would have absolutely loved it. I've had a pretty good day despite the weather, and I hope you've enjoyed this little history lesson. We're coming for a run along the Coast Road. Bye bye, and I'll catch you on the next one. This is the Antrim Coast Road, and it's a road that came very close to never existing at all. But when it was today I'm going to tell you the story of its construction,